You grew the grain. Now serve your sister, Orson Bellamy said. He nudged the bread platter toward Ada with 2 fingers, as though he were sending a hired girl back to the kitchen instead of speaking to the daughter who had brought his north field out of weeds and dust. 14 people sat beneath the Bellamy threshing barn, their plates bright in the October sun. Delia Bellamy occupied the place beside Bram Kincaid. She wore cream wool and the pearl combs their mother had left behind. Ada stood at the end of the table, in a deep blue work dress and a clean apron, broad and full-figured, with chaff still caught in one chestnut braid. Ada set the platter down. I agreed to raise the north field for half the crop. I did not agree to disappear from the table. The back legs of Bram Kincaid's chair struck the barn floor. He rose, took the chair by its worn oak back, and pulled it away from Delia's place. Then he carried it around the corner of the table and set it beside Ada. His shoulders filled a charcoal work shirt and brown wool vest, but his voice stayed level. If Miss Bellamy grew the wheat, I reckon I ought to sit where I can hear her terms. Orson's face hardened. That chair was set for Delia. Then set another. Ada did not sit. She looked from the empty chair to Bram's weathered face. He had come down from Greycap Pass to arrange the hauling of the Bellamy harvest, a contract worth enough to winter his high country ranch. Every person at the table knew it. Orson leaned forward. Move it back, Kincaid, or you can haul another man's wheat. Bram left the chair where it stood. Ada said, Before anybody hauls this wheat, my half will be weighed apart. Her father gave a short laugh. There is no half. The land is mine. The barn is mine. Every sack under this roof belongs to Bellamy Farm. Ada's hand closed around the edge of the platter. You gave me the north bench before witnesses. I bought the seed. I hired the first team. Half was the bargain. The bargain changed. A wagon rolled into the yard beyond the open barn doors. Painted on its side was the black wheel used by Victor Sayer, the grain broker from Cedar Run. Orson glanced toward it, and then back at Ada. I sold the whole harvest yesterday, he said. Sayer's men begin loading at dawn. The supper went silent except for one spoon settling against a plate. Bram looked at Orson. Did Sayer buy the north field too? He bought Bellamy wheat. That was not my question. Orson pushed his chair back. My house, my table, my answer. Ada untied her apron. She folded it once and placed it beside the bread she had made from the first small milling of the Northfield grain. Then this is the last meal I serve under your bargain, she said. She walked out through the barn doors without touching the chair Bram had moved for her. Bram found her at the north stackyard, where the wheat stood in high round stacks above timber skids. Late light caught the red-brown tips of the grain heads. Ada had built the stacks off the ground and capped them tight against rain. The Southfield stacks, raised by her father's men, sat lower and already leaned along one side. She heard Bram's boots in the stubble and did not turn. If you came to tell me he had the right to humiliate me in his own barn, she said, save your breath for the pass. I came to ask whether you want me here. That made her look at him. He had left his hat in his hands. Wind had pushed dark hair across his forehead. The mountain weather had put lines around his eyes, but there was nothing careless in the way he watched her. Ada considered him. You may look. You may listen. You may refuse to haul grain that is not his. You may not settle this for me. Fair terms. She pulled one head of wheat from a bundle and rolled it between her palms. Hard red kernels fell into her hand. This came from Kansas seed, she said. It stands the cold better than Father's spring wheat. I planted it deeper on the north bench, where the wind dries the surface. We kept every bundle separate. Bram took one kernel only after she tipped it toward him. He pressed it beneath his thumb, then gave it back. How much? A little over 200 sacks if the threshing goes clean. Half mine after seed and machine costs. Enough to lease the Custer place. Ada's eyes narrowed. Who told you that? Nobody. I saw you look at it when I rode in. A woman does not look at an empty farmhouse that way unless she has already measured the roof with her eyes. Against her will, the corner of her mouth shifted. The west roof needs 12 new boards, she said, and the well curb is rotten. 13 boards. 12 if the sound ones are turned. For the first time that day, Bram smiled. The smile did not last. 2 Bellamy hands came from the south barn carrying fresh paper tags and a bucket of whitewash. One started toward Ada's stacks. Ada stepped between him and the first bundle. What are those for? The older hand, Amos Reed, would not meet her eyes. Your father says Sayer wants every stack marked before dark. The north stacks stay separate. Miss Ada, he signs my wages. And I directed your work in this field for 11 months. Amos looked toward the house. I have 3 children. Ada took the brush from his hand and set it inside the bucket. Then do not lose your pay on my account. Go mark the south stacks. Leave these untouched. The men went without argument. Bram watched them cross the yard. You let them off easy, he said. A man with hungry children is not my enemy because my father holds his wages. And your father? Ada looked across the stubble at the house where she had lived all 32 years of her life. I have not decided what he is yet. At sunrise, Ada went to the equipment shed and found the horsepower thresher gone. The broad drag marks led toward the south field. Orson had moved it during the night and stationed 2 hired men beside it. The long drive belt lay coiled beneath a canvas. 8 horses stood ready for the sweep. Ada approached her father. The north stacks must be threshed first. They are dry. The south grain took damp in the last rain. Sayer wants volume, not one of your lectures. Mix damp spring wheat with mine, and the sacks may heat before they reach the mining camps. Victor Sayer stepped from behind the machine. He wore a black town coat too fine for the field, and carried Orson's bill of sale folded inside one glove. Mr. Bellamy sold sound wheat, Sayer said. If it spoils, I collect from him. If you mix these fields, you will not know what you bought. Sayer's thin smile reached no farther than his mustache. I bought what stands on Bellamy land. Ada turned to Orson. You said half before Amos Reed, Ruth Fenwick, and Mr. Pomeroy at the store. I said many things before the North Field made money. There it was, plain enough for every hired man to hear. Ada looked at the idle horses, the machine, and the sky beyond Greycap. A long gray shelf had formed above the western peaks. Early snow sometimes crossed the pass before the town below felt the first cold wind. How long until you begin? She asked. An hour, Sayer answered. Then you have an hour to reconsider. She walked away. Bram waited beside his bay gelding near the road. His freight wagon stood empty behind him. Orson canceled my hauling agreement, he said. Sayer brought his own teens. Ada stopped. How much did you lose? Enough. That is not a number. $380 before expenses. She stared at him. That money could have bought feed and kept hired men through a hard winter. You should have moved the chair back. Would that have made the wheat his? No. Then the chair is where it belongs. He held out her blue wool coat, which she had left on a peg in the barn. He did not drape it over her shoulders. He waited until she took it. What do you need? He asked. Witnesses, a second machine, and people who would rather lose one day helping me than spend another year wondering whether Orson Bellamy can change a bargain after the work is done. Where do we start? Ada pulled on the coat. You start by staying out of the way until I ask. Bram said, I can do that. By noon, Ada had ridden to 3 neighboring farms. At the Fenwick place, Ruth Fenwick listened with flour on her forearms and anger gathering in her gray eyes. Ada had helped her choose seed after Ruth's husband died and had lent a team without charging for the day. "Orson made that share bargain in my kitchen," Ruth said. "He wanted everyone to hear how generous he was when the field looked useless. Will you say so tomorrow? I will say it today." At the Morales farm, Tomas Morales offered 4 horses and 2 sons. At Pomeroy's store, the proprietor opened his thick account book and found Ada's seed purchase under her own name. Ada did not ask him to decide ownership. She asked him to tell the truth about who paid. By late afternoon, 11 neighbors had gathered outside the north field. They could offer teams and hands, but the nearest spare thresher belonged to the Cedar Run threshing ring. It stood 6 miles east with a cracked shaker board. "I can mend the board," Ada said, "if Mr. Lott will release the machine." The owner rubbed his jaw. "Orson chairs the ring. He can fine me for moving it out of turn." "How much?" $20. Ada took a small purse from inside her coat. It contained the money she had saved for the Custer roof. "I will cover 10 now, and 10 from my first sold sack." Bram reached toward his pocket. Ada gave him one look. His hand dropped. Mr. Lott took Ada's $10. "Bring it back in working order." Better than working order. The machine arrived at dusk. Ada set lanterns around the open shed and removed the damaged shaker board. Bram held the lantern only where she told him. Tomas cut the replacement timber. Ada marked the fit, tested the movement, and rejected the first pin when it dragged. Hours passed. The gathering wind pressed cold air beneath the door. When the repaired board finally moved cleanly, the neighbors went home to rest their horses. Bram remained beside the machine while Ada rubbed warmth back into her fingers. "You gave up roof money," he said. $10 of it. "You may need the rest before this is over." "I know." He took off his gloves and set them on the bench between them. "I have spent 7 years keeping my ranch by refusing every risk I could not measure. Then I came to supper and moved a chair without knowing what it would cost." Ada studied the cracked skin along his knuckles. "Do you regret it?" "I regret that it surprised you." The answer reached a place in her that praise could not. She sat on the edge of the workbench. "Father used to bring me into the fields when I was 12. He said I could read soil by the weeds. After Mother died, he began saying Delia belonged in company, and I belonged wherever the work was heaviest." He was right about one thing. Her expression sharpened. "You can read soil?" Ada let out a breath that almost became a laugh. Bram leaned against the wall, leaving the space between them untouched. "Why the Custer place?" "Because every room in that house is empty. An empty room can become anything. A room in Father's house already knows what he expects of me." "And what do you expect of yourself?" "A field with my own gate. Accounts under my own name. Supper where nobody earns a chair by pretending she did not earn the bread." "That sounds worth 13 roof boards." 12. This time they both smiled. The shed door opened before either could say more. Delia stood outside, wrapped in a pale shawl. Her pearl combs were gone. In her hands she carried a leather account folder. "Ada," she said, "I need to tell you what Father did." She placed the folder on the workbench but did not open it until Ada nodded. Inside were bills from a dress shop Delia had tried to run in Cedar Run the previous spring. Ada knew the shop had closed. She had not known their father had borrowed against the Bellamy harvest to pay its creditors. Another paper listed a dowry of cattle, furniture, and cash Orson had promised while encouraging Bram to visit Delia. "I thought he was using the south crop," Delia said. "He told me you had agreed to wait another year for your share." Ada looked at her sister. "Did that sound like me?" Delia's eyes filled, but she did not look away. "No. It sounded convenient." The debt explained why Orson needed every sack. It also explained why he had seated Delia beside Bram and turned Ada into a servant before witnesses. If the room accepted the arrangement, he could make theft look like family duty. "How much does he owe?" Ada asked. "More than his half of the crop will bring. Less than the whole crop and your saved money together." Bram moved away from the bench. "I can wait outside." Ada shook her head. "You were named in the arrangement. You should hear what was offered in your name." Delia folded her hands. "I never asked Father to bargain me into your freight contract." "I know," Bram said. Ada closed the folder. Anger came clean and cold now, stripped of confusion. "Delia, tomorrow you must choose whether to repeat the truth in front of Sayer." Her sister swallowed. "And if it costs the shop debt?" "The debt is already yours. The wheat is not." Delia nodded once. Before dawn, the north field filled with teams. Ruth Fenwick brought coffee and harness. Tomas Morales brought his sons. Mr. Lott brought the repaired thresher and a face prepared for an argument. Ada placed the machine beside the north stacks, positioned the wagons, and assigned every person a task. The first bundle had just reached the feeder when Victor Sayer rode through the gate with Orson and 6 hired men. Sayer held up the bill of sale. "Stop that machine!" Nobody moved. Orson pointed at Ada. "You are stealing from your own family. I am taking the share you promised before this field was worth stealing. You will ruin this farm over pride." Ada stepped onto the low wagon bed so every worker could see her. "The north wheat will be threshed alone. Machine costs come out first. Half the sound grain stays with Bellamy Farm. Half is held in my name until Cedar Run settles the claim. No man here has to choose my word over Father's. You only have to keep the fields separate." It was a fairer offer than Orson deserved, and everyone knew it. Sayer looked toward the western ridge. The gray cloud shelf had thickened. "Snow by night. I paid for a loaded crop, not a family hearing. Then you should have asked who grew it," Ada said. He ordered his men forward. Bram guided his horse between them and the machine. He wore no gun on his hip. He simply sat tall in the saddle, broad enough to make the narrow lane feel narrower. "You can reach the thresher," he told Sayer, "after you ride through 11 neighbors who came to keep one field separate." Sayer glanced at the men and women around the machine. "This is not your crop, Kincaid." "No, that is why I am not claiming it." Orson's voice cut across the yard. "I will see that no grower in this valley hires your wagons again." Bram dismounted. He took the brass freight token Orson had given him months earlier and placed it on the fence post. "Then I will haul for people who know the difference between an agreement and a favor." Ada met his eyes. He had just surrendered more than one contract. He had challenged the man who chaired the local growers' ring and controlled most of the valley's winter freight. Still, Bram did not touch the machine or give an order. He looked to Ada. She raised her hand. "Start the sweep." The horses leaned into their traces. The long arms of the horsepower began to turn. The belt tightened, the thresher shuddered, and the repaired shaker settled into a clean rhythm. Golden chaff burst into the cold air. Hard red kernels poured from the Northfield grain spout into the first waiting sack. Ada checked the grain, the belt, and the wind. She moved one crew to the sheltered side and shortened the bundle line when the gusts strengthened. When a bearing heated, she stopped the sweep before it damaged the shaft. Every delay cost daylight, but care saved the machine. By mid-morning, 40 sacks stood in 2 straight rows. Mr. Pomeroy arrived from Cedar Run with the account book showing Ada's seed purchase. Amos Reed came from the south field and confirmed that Ada had kept the north bundles separate from cutting through stacking. Ruth Fenwick spoke last. "Orson promised Ada half in my kitchen. He wanted us all to hear it when he thought she would fail." Sayer looked at the red wheat, then at the pale spring kernels he had taken from Orson's south stack. The difference could be seen from an open palm. "Your bill says the entire North Harvest was yours to sell," he told Orson. Orson's jaw worked. "It stands on my ground." "And half of it stands under your promise." Sayer was not defending Ada. He was defending himself from a bad purchase. That was enough. He folded the bill of sale. "I will take your half after machine costs. The rest stays here until the claim is settled. The shortage comes out of what I still owe you." Orson went pale. "That will not cover my note." Delia walked into the yard carrying the pearl combs, a small jewelry case, and the keys to the buggy their father had bought for her. "Then sell these," she said. "Sell the buggy. Close my debt with my property, not Ada's crop." Orson stared at his younger daughter as though the chair at supper had moved a second time. "I did this for your future." "You did it because you could not bear to tell me the truth." The first flakes of snow crossed the field. Ada could have stopped then. Her share had witnesses, visible separation, and a buyer unwilling to touch it. But half the north crop still stood in stacks, and snow was gathering along the timber skids. She looked across the people waiting for her decision. "We finish the north field before we discuss punishment." The work resumed. Snow thickened across the afternoon. Bram took a place in the bundle line beside Thomas and Amos. He worked where Ada assigned him, no closer to the machine than any other hand. Delia tied back her sleeves and sewed torn sacks. Ruth kept the horses watered and the coffee hot. Orson stood outside the circle until one of the south stacks sagged beneath its damp cap. Ada saw it happen. She also saw him calculate what pride would cost if the spring wheat spoiled. He approached her slowly. "You were right about the south stacks," he said. Ada did not make the apology easier for him. "Yes." "If your machine finishes north before dark, will you move it south?" "At the ring rate. Wages paid before debt. My share sealed in Pomeroy's warehouse." He looked toward the workers who had heard every word. "Agreed." Ada held out her hand. Orson took it. By lantern light, the thresher turned on the south field. Ada's red wheat sat secure beneath canvas in 2 community wagons. Orson's pale wheat came through damp but salvageable because she had refused to let him mix it with hers. The last sack was tied near midnight. Ada leaned against the barn post, too tired to feel triumphant. Bram brought her a cup of coffee and waited until she accepted it. "You saved his half, too," he said. "The workers' wages were tied to it. He may tell himself you saved him. He may tell himself anything he likes. The account will tell the truth." Bram glanced toward the oak chair still sitting beside the end of the supper table. Nobody had moved it since the afternoon before. "I have been wondering whether that chair offended you." Ada followed his gaze. "The chair did not." "The man moving it?" She let him wait one breath. "He surprised me. I can try to become more predictable. Please do not overwork yourself." He laughed softly, and the sound eased something between them. The settlement took 9 days. Mr. Pomeroy stored Ada's 106 sacks under her name. Sayer bought 60 at a fair valley price after deducting her share of the machine cost. Bram bought 20 for his ranch, paying the same price as everyone else. He refused the discount she offered for his lost contract. "I did not move that chair to earn cheaper wheat," he told her. Orson sold Delia's buggy and 2 show horses to cover the worst of her shop debt. He retained his land and his half of the crop, but the growers' ring chose Ruth Fenwick to replace him as chair until every labor agreement was recorded plainly. It was not a courtroom victory. It was a valley deciding that a public bargain should survive private disappointment. Delia took work with the Cedar Run dressmaker and began paying what remained of her debt herself. She and Ada did not repair years of imbalance in one conversation. They began with honesty and left the rest to time. Ada used her wheat money to lease the Custer place for 3 years. The owner credited her first season's repairs against rent. Bram hauled the roof boards without charge only after Ada agreed to trade him seed selection for the next high country planting. He brought 13 boards. She used 12. The 13th became a narrow shelf beside the kitchen window. 6 weeks after the harvest supper, Bram arrived at Ada's house with no freight papers and no excuse about wheat. Snow rested white along the fence lines. Warm lamplight reached through the repaired window. Ada opened the door. "What are you hauling?" "Myself, if you have room." "That depends on the rate." "Coffee, split wood, and honest intentions." "The first 2 might earn you an hour." He carried in an oak chair he had repaired from the Bellamy barn. The back rail had been smoothed and oiled, but one old scrape remained where he had dragged it across the floor. He set it near her table, not beside her own chair. "Ada, I would like to court you. I am not asking for a housekeeper, a harvest, or a woman grateful to be chosen over her sister. I am asking because I respect your judgment. I miss your voice when I ride home, and every room I enter feels less honest when you are not in it." Ada looked at the empty chair. "And if I say I need time?" "I keep bringing coffee until you tell me to stop." "And if I never leave this farm for Gray Cap?" "Then we discuss 2 homes, like adults who both own work worth keeping." That answer mattered more than the chair, the freight contract, or the public stand. He had imagined love without first imagining her surrender. Ada crossed the room and placed her hand on the chair back. "You may put it beside mine." Bram moved it slowly, stopping before the 2 chairs touched. Ada moved hers the final inch. He looked at her, waiting. She touched his weathered cheek. "You may kiss me, too." "Those are better terms than I hoped for." His kiss was careful at first, then warm when she drew him closer. Outside, winter settled over the fields Ada had chosen for herself. Inside, 2 oak chairs stood side by side at a table where her work, her name, and her answer all had a place.